Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mark and I thank you so much for coming by today. Well, there's a lot to talk about today, but first of all, I just want to mention that I'm really excited about this. This is a Magello water bucket, if you can see this here, which I actually just purchased from Michael's craft stores for just $5. It was on sale. It was marked down from about $25. So I really feel fortunate that I got a hold of this thing. This is really great. And also I got a great deal on this new little mini water brush. It's a Pentel water brush, and you can see there's the full-size one. This is a little mini one that I'd never seen before, and these were on sale for just, I think, $3.99. So I grabbed one, and I was going to buy more, but there was only just this one left. So I'm excited to try this, and the biggest... Oops, I dropped it on the floor. And talk about this and more about the biggest mistakes that we make when we go shopping for art supplies. So let's talk about this and more, and come on along. Let me first begin by saying that the YouTube art community is an amazing collective of like-minded people, both content creators like myself and viewers like you, who collaborate and share ideas on how to improve our skills, avoid making costly mistakes, and offering a support network for a host of educational and personal experiences. A few of these YouTube artists who I've grown to know and become friends with decided to put together a collection of videos based on our years of experience in the arts and crafts fields to do exactly that, to support the community. The first of these videos is called Our Biggest Mistakes, and the participants are myself, Lisa at Lacry Fine Art, Lindsay at The Frugal Crafter, Steve at The Mind of Watercolor, Angela Fair and Angela Anderson, and Mona at Craft Clatch. I'll post a link to each of these amazing artists' biggest mistake videos in the description below, and I really hope you'll check them out when you can. We each chose to share a biggest mistake that we thought would be of interest to our viewers, and then expand it to a larger community. From watercolor painters, pen and ink and colored pencil fans, to crafters, hobbyists, and anyone just exploring their creative journey. For me, I chose to share my thoughts on my biggest mistakes buying art supplies. I don't like to admit it, but these are the mistakes that I've made throughout my life that I wish I knew when I was younger. They would have saved me a lot of time, money, and frustration, but which I also wouldn't have learned from, to get to the point where I am now, and to be a little bit more smart and more frugal with my time and my money when I'm buying art supplies. Originally, I started recording this video at my local art supply store, but I started thinking about it and realized if I go to an art supply store and record a video on the biggest mistakes when buying art supplies, I'm going to get myself into trouble and go against my own advice. And it got a little uncomfortable, so instead of wandering through the aisles and pointing at art supplies I want to buy, I thought it best to come back to my studio and be creative here and use the supplies I already have. So why make a video on the biggest mistakes when buying art supplies? I mean, it's pretty obvious that when you go in, you buy what you need and then leave, right? Well, not always, because while most art supply stores are literally a paradise of products to get artists drooling, there's still a retail place of business with one objective: to get our money. And in getting our money, they need to raise product prices to pay for their rent, their shelf space, employee payroll, insurance, inventory, and a lot more. A product you can find online for about $5 may cost upwards of $7 to $10 in a retail store. And the smaller the retail store, like a mom and pop art shop, the higher the prices will be, because they can't buy products in large bulk like the big stores. Still, I'm a big fan of going to my local art supply store and helping to keep them in business over buying online when I can. Unfortunately, the retail stores don't often sell what I need, and worse, to increase their sales, they sell a lot of novelty items that people buy on impulse. So, what are these biggest mistakes when buying art supplies? Well, let's talk about that right after this coffee break. Whether you're visiting your local, or in my case distant, art supply store, or you're buying online, there's some things that are important to think about and remember before putting your money down or clicking that final link to complete the purchase. For me, the closest art supply store is a small family-owned shop about 20 to 25 minutes away. Much of their inventory is covered in dust, and they survive by having a framing business in the same shop. I only go there when I'm desperate and I need something right away because their prices are usually way too high. The other family business I go to is about an hour away, and I adore the people despite the slightly high prices. They do well in keeping a regular rotation of fresh inventory in stock. And then there's the big chain, Dick Blick. There are two of them in the city of Boston and one in Providence, Rhode Island, putting each of them at about an hour and a half away from me. Those are the best places to save money, but at the price of travel. I've heard from viewers that their closest art supply stores are often several hours away, so I definitely consider myself fortunate to have so much so close by. But no matter which art supply store I go to, there's an itinerary of do's and don'ts that I follow religiously. As for the do's, it's pretty much do go in and explore, look around and see all the amazing supplies. Do touch things and get a feel for new products, sketchbooks, pencils, and brushes. Do ask questions and engage the staff because you never know who you're talking to or what kind of artist they might be or what kind of information they may have. And lastly, do plan on spending money because these art supplies are not cheap and it's important to be prepared. Still, as for the don'ts, well, that's where the biggest mistakes are often made. I listed out 10 of the biggest mistakes when buying art supplies that I've encountered, and hopefully they'll resonate with you or sound familiar. I admit I've made all these mistakes in the past myself, but luckily for me, I've learned from them. The first is, number 1, don't go art supply shopping with friends or family. It's always fun to go to an art supply store with friends or family, as everyone, even non-artists, gets giddy and excited in an art supply store. And why not? It's a place to explore and to have fun. However, it's important when we're buying art supplies for ourselves not to be distracted, rushed, or pressured into buying something we don't need. I love my kids to tears, but the one thing I don't like is to take them art supply shopping. Because while I'm trying to make serious decisions, the trip usually becomes about them and the impulse purchases they want to make. I don't blame them, of course, because like I said, it is exciting and fun. And for me, going with friends always results in feeling rushed and pressured to buy things I didn't come in for. My friends will say, "Oh, these are really cool, you should buy these. I think you'd love these." Well, there are times when I will go shopping with my friends and family, but just not when I'm on a mission to get my own art supplies. Number 2, don't forget to research products, find out about sales, and bring coupons. One of the biggest mistakes I've made is going into a store and not knowing the difference between different products or brands. For example, you've heard great things about Daniel Smith paints, but you've also heard good things about Winsor & Newton too. So you look at the Winsor & Newton display and find that their Cotman paints are much cheaper than Daniel Smith. But when you get them home and start using them, you find that while they're good paints, your expectations of them were much higher because you didn't realize that Daniel Smith are professional grade while Cotman paints are student grade. Doing the research on products before we go to a store or even buying online is essential to being a smart, savvy, and well-informed consumer. Whether it's a computer, a new food line, or even a set of markers, knowing what we're buying ahead of time can save a lot of headaches and disappointment. Also, when doing that research, it's a wise idea to see which stores are having sales and if they have coupons or coupon codes. While I was at Michael's, many of the products I looked at were marked up pretty high. Yet, I know that when I go onto their store's Wi-Fi, I'll get a 40% coupon on my screen. And to me, saving 40% on products that are already marked up is a lot better than not having a coupon and paying full price. And I learned when I was an executive designer at Staples that shopping just after their back-to-school sales will usually get you much better deals than shopping during the sale itself, as they need to clear out their inventory. Number 3, don't use credit cards. I know, it's often the most convenient way to pay for expensive art supplies when you don't have the cash. But honestly, if you don't have the cash, maybe you should consider not buying the art supplies at all. Even if you do, paying cash or with a debit card will limit the amount you're spending without having to pay a percentage fee to the credit card company and risking penalties if the total amount isn't paid in full when it's due. Also, it costs the store money to run those credit cards, so using them can also affect the store as well, who's likely to raise prices to compensate for credit card fees. And that leads into number 4, don't bring a large amount of cash. So if you're not going to use your credit card, it's important not to bring too much money and risk overspending. As far back as I can remember, I've kept a change jar that I put my spare change into and save up as my art supply fund. I don't touch that jar until it's full, and when it is, that's when I'll plan my trip to the art supply store. It usually holds about $100, and there's a lot of great stuff I can buy with that money. For me, this is how I keep a cap on how much I spend when I go art supply shopping. It's all based on what I can afford and what I need as opposed to just what I want. I also know that if I walk into an art supply store with $500, I'm more than likely going to spend most of it, usually buying more than I need or than I can afford. So, on average for me, I'll bring anywhere from $50 to $100 with me, knowing that I can buy exactly what I need and maybe even have enough to splurge on something I want too. Number 5, don't go without a list or knowing exactly what you plan to buy. People who know me know that I'm a perpetual planner. I plan everything when I can, and buying art supplies is no different. In my last trip, I went with a short list. I needed Daniel Smith Paraline Maroon paint, Opera Pink paint, a render sketchbook, and 3 Escoda versatile brushes that were on sale. I knew exactly how much everything was going to cost, and because I had my teacher's discount, it cost even less than I had planned. Going into an art supply store not knowing what you want will usually result in buying items you don't need. And that's okay too, as long as you're aware. Number 6, don't forget what art supplies you already have. One of the biggest mistakes I've made in the past is with colored pencils and paintbrushes. I tend to buy things that I already have, but that I just forgot that I had. And I feel really stupid when I get home and see that I've already got 3 crimson red Prismacolor pencils or a drawer full of gum erasers. Nobody goes into a grocery store with a list of everything they already have at home, but taking a peek into the cabinets before you go and creating a list of what you need is always a good idea. The same goes for art supplies. Before you go art supply shopping, take a look in all those bins, boxes, and drawers to see what you have and what you may need. A lot of times, I'll find an old empty tube of paint that needs to be replaced, and sometimes I find art supplies that I forgot I even had. And trust me, finding art supplies that you forgot you had is like reconnecting with an old friend, and it may save you from buying it again. And that goes into number 7. Don't buy repeat items. And like the grocery store analogy, it's not wise to buy items that we already have because we think we're going to need more. It's like buying a jar of honey because the one you have at home is only half full. It can be an expensive waste of money on something we don't need, money that can be saved or spent on something else. Now, I'm guilty of this because I buy things like Micron pens because I go through them so often. I'll often buy 2 or 3 at a time. So there are cases where buying repeat items is necessary. But again, planning for it will keep to that which you need and not what you don't. Number 8, don't listen to the people who work at the store. Now, don't get me wrong. I give the people who work in art supply stores a lot of credit because they work really hard and they have to know a lot of information about a lot of different products, mediums, and techniques. Plus, they have to deal with artists all day. But when it comes to doing my shopping, I've had more art supply store employees give me wrong information that led me to make purchases that I've regretted later. More recently, I asked an employee if they carried empty half pans for watercolor, explaining that most places don't carry them and that they're hard to find. The employee very confidently said, "Oh yeah, we have those," and I got excited, and they led me across the store to where the half pans were kept. Except when we got there, they weren't there. They actually were never there. So they led me across the store to another aisle and said, "Here you go," and pointed to plastic pallets. I explained that that's not what I was looking for, told the employee exactly what I was looking for, and was led across the store again. And this went on for about 10 or 15 minutes before I finally stopped, realized they don't carry them, and I thanked the person for their help. But what I wanted to say was, look, if you don't know the information, don't pretend you do, lead me astray, and just ask another employee if they know. I'm all about not wasting time or energy or going on a wild goose chase to find something that may or may not exist. Again, going into the store with a good plan of what you need is the best way to go. Asking for help is always a wise thing to do, but when it's clear that the employee doesn't know the answer, or if they clearly have no idea what you're talking about, or if they don't know what they're talking about, then it's good to politely say thank you and just walk away. Number 9, avoid cheap, impulse, or novelty purchases. Have you ever gone into the grocery store and stood in line and found yourself surrounded by candy bars, chewing gum, chips, and magazines? Or maybe you've stood in one of those twisting lines at a big box store in a maze of shelves with car chargers, headphones, and bright-colored flash drives? These are all impulse purchases that retail stores put on display at the checkout area, knowing that customers will think, "Hey, I need one of those." Well, in art supply stores, these can be found all over the store, on the end caps, at the register, and even on special displays in the middle of the floor. They're usually really cheap plastic items or tchatchke novelty items that nobody really needs or wants, but which might be kind of fun or cute. Like, for example, a set of mini paintbrushes I once saw. I bought them for my daughter thinking how cute they were and how she'd love them. They cost about $10 and they were smaller than wooden matchsticks. Well, my daughter tried them and found out quickly that they were junk. They were very cute, but they were junk, and it was a waste of $10. So avoiding these impulse purchases will not only save you money, but it will keep from adding more clutter to what already exists. Number 10, don't buy items that you'll never use. Buying what we need is the most important reason to visit an art supply store. But sometimes buying what we want can be fun and fill us with a positive emotional rush that feels good and gives us a feeling of excitement. A few years back, I found a large package of natural sponges for painting for about $10 that I thought would be fun to try. I also found a package of neon-colored pastels for about $15. Like most people, we get caught up in the shopping experience, and buying impulse and novelty purchases can be fun, and sometimes it's worth it just for the smile that it gives us. But for me, I really thought I would use those sponges in pastels. I brought them home, tried them a couple of times, and well, now they sit at the bottom of my bin and I haven't used them since I bought them. I'll probably donate them, but it makes me roll my eyes to think that I spent $25 on things that I don't use. Again, what a waste. Sure, you never know if you don't try. But if you're going to shop for art supplies, unless you have a real need for something, maybe try to hold off on buying it until you actually have a need for it. Now, this list was originally going to stop at 10, but I want it to go up to 11. So I thought this one was worth including because it is actually important. Number 11 is don't go to an art supply store when they're about to close. There's nothing worse than casually shopping and hearing that voice come over the intercom saying, "Attention shoppers, the store will be closing in 5 minutes." Our happy, casual grazing in the aisles suddenly turns into a panicked run to grab whatever we can as we lunge toward the register so they don't close out and keep us from giving them our money. In all seriousness, being rushed or having that feeling of a clock ticking overhead can be a real distraction. So it's important to give ourselves plenty of time to peruse the aisles, compare brands, prices, and products, and test things whenever possible. I've found that when the store is closing and I'm at the checkout, there can often be a problem with one of the items I'm buying, and then they have to call the manager, figure out the issue, go back and find a replacement, or look at the shelf tag for the correct price. It can make everyone uncomfortable, especially if you're the last person in the store and all the employees just want to go home. So, while an impulsive trip to the art supply store can result in expensive impulse purchases, it can be to our benefit to plan a trip to the art supply store, giving ourselves time to explore, just as it can be to our benefit to plan out exactly what we plan to buy when we get there. So these are just some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen in my experiences when shopping for art supplies. And with that, let me just add a few tips to help make the experience even better. Some tips that I would advise when shopping for art supplies might be, number 1, look for clearance sections to find really good deals on items you might not have considered paying full price for. Number 2, go to other areas of the store that you normally wouldn't explore. So if you like drawing in pen and ink, check out the pastel aisle. If you like watercolors, check out oils. Explore to learn. Number 3, ask other customers their opinions or advice. Customers are often more passionate and knowledgeable about their supplies than the actual employees. Number 4, don't dismiss value packs or product sets. These can often contain hidden gems or bargains that we might overlook because they look cheap. And number 5, Always stop before you get to the checkout line and take the time to reevaluate every purchase you're about to make and make sure that's what you want and that you can afford it. Well, I hope this information was helpful for you, and it might even give you an advantage the next time you go shopping for art supplies as well. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please do so I can bring you more content like this in the future. As always, enjoy your creative journey to the fullest, have fun with whatever you're exploring, and I thank you again so much for coming by. Have a great day, and God bless.